Hey YouTube, this is the art of prepping. We're talking about traditional bushcraft tools. This is going to stand in for more primitive variants of the hand axe. And of course, some people prefer hatchets as well. That's a personal choice. They can range from just a few pounds to much more. There's forest axe, there's smaller hand axes like this. There's a lot of different kinds. Some people prefer wooden handles, and some people have different desires and preferences as well as what kind of steel that the axe head's made of, how it's pinned or how it's forged, and even what kind of like grips. Is it rubber overmolded? Is it just basically checkered or textured wood? I mean, there's all kinds. So when we come to these types of preferences, you won't even know what you like until you actually explore it yourself. So you're going to have to try them out. You know, most people have like this one, for example. This is just my utilitarian little hand axe that helps me actually clear out some of the woods and create trails. And I don't typically ever wear this or carry this when I go out on an outing, for example. If I go out and camp or if I go out on trails and I'm not cleaning a trail out, I don't bring this. This is too bulky and heavy for my taste, and that's just my opinion. You can go with lighter weight hatchets. I tend to do that a little bit more the few times that I do carry a wood processing tool of that nature. You can also go with other variants. It could be a larger chopping knife. It could be a hybrid, such as this. It's like a type of bolo machete. It's a smaller machete. They can definitely do some processing. It's probably not meant for that. It's probably meant for light, bush clearing, trail clearing. And so you can go with heavier choppers, heavier than this, much thicker blade tings. And so that's an option. Now, there are some people who just say, I don't want to have anything to do with any of those. I want just a traditional bushcraft knife, and I don't want any big choppers. I don't want no axe, and I definitely don't want no hatchets because they're all bulky, and I'm into lightweight carry. I do think that having at least a chopper or an axe or hatchet is going to be much more giving in terms of capability. Let's just be honest. The more options you have, the more you can do. But there are people who say I don't want any of that, and I'm just a saw person. Or some people also say, I'm not into axes and hatchets or saws. I'm just into larger chopping blades that can do all that. Now, the problem with all that is that the studies have shown, and of course through testimonies like myself that I've given over time, that you use less energy when you use a handsaw or any type of saw for the matter. You just don't feel as fatigued. I think you probably use less muscle groups, a lot less force is exerted. And so something like this Baco Laplander made in Sweden, they also have all kinds of different brands that are very high quality and much larger sizes, or you can even use like a multi-tool size saw blade. It's a little small for me, and I don't think it's really practical for a lot of things. This is kind of like the smallest that I would recommend. And so, this is definitely an option that can replace chopping. Now, sometimes you may say, well, chopping is just what I need for my area. Then go for it. But by all means, though, a saw can actually sub in for most hatchets and axes, believe it or not. I mean, this is a very viable option. But some people are visceral in different ways. Some people like that chopping motion versus the sawing motion. So this is a personal preference once again. But I do know people, quite a few people, who only use these lightweight hand saws and just a traditional bushcraft knife, and they don't have axes, hatchets, or large choppers. And so just consider that. Now, traditional bushcraft, and we're going back to that theme, we would have to say that they would traditionally have a small forest axe. That's just going to be honest with you. That's typically the, I guess they would call it the MO or the actual, I guess I don't want to say stereotypical, but it is, a small forest axe, maybe a collapsible small handsaw. That wasn't really around a lot back then as much. And they would have maybe a larger bushcraft knife than we typically carry now. Maybe even like of a Bowie, but definitely a larger knife configuration. Sometimes they took the different types of meat processing knives or carving knives, and they modified it to make it into their bushcraft knife. That was pretty common. So, you know, when we talk about this, there's a lot of different types of variants of what traditional cutting tools were in the day. It depends on what region, and of course, even not only just in the United States, but I mean the world. Like, people have totally different systems. And so, I mean, there are groups of people that their bushcraft knife was simply it's a variant of what we would consider a machete. And that's what their knife was. And they would do, you know, whittling with it. And, you know, a big blade like that. They had the skill for that. And they didn't typically have smaller knives. So it just depends on your culture and traditions of what is predominant in your area and what helps satisfy your needs. So hopefully this was helpful on some level. You'd have to try all these out. Some people actually carry all this stuff at once. For me, I do have to say I do like to carry this smaller folding blade, this smaller folding saw blade. And this to me really works so much better because it's so much lighter weight. Now, if I'm in a dense terrain, I'll add a machete with this. But other than that, though, guys, I don't really get into having a lot of heavier tools. And that's just me, and that's just in my area. Because when I couple this with a nice fixed blade, which we'll talk about next, it pretty much takes care of all my needs. Thanks again for watching the video, for your support, and I'll catch you real soon.